Hey guys, it's Karie Carico with Carico Real Estate, and I am so lucky to be here with Eric Leibold with Stark Exterminators, and we are going to talk about this pesky little um, bug that hits North Carolina, and it's not a termite. Um, it is a unique, pest that a lot of people have like not really heard about. But we're going to jump right in and just kind of go into a little bit about Eric's background. Eric, tell us how you got into the bug business.
Well, I was in construction and
Mhm.
it was a little seasonal at the time. And a friend told me about, the pest control industry.
Yeah,
And so I just really excelled in it just because of my construction background.
yeah.
And it's that started in the mid 90s and here I am ever since. I'm a senior home evaluator with Stark Exterminators and I love doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah, excellent, excellent. I know, and you've been great with us. We love all of your help, and it's amazing that we can just call upon you and get service, and we trust you because you figure it out and you're there for us. So we love working with you. But let's kind of jump into the main topic that we're going to talk about today. What what is a powder post beetle?
So a powder post beetle is a wood destroying insect.
Mhm.
They will nest in wood and destroy wood. It's pretty common in crawl spaces and tree limbs, even
Mhm.
wood piles, and they can cause they are a wood destroying insect, and it is problematic here in North Carolina.
Yeah. So what's the difference between those and termites?
Well, termites, the only termite that we have here in North Carolina is the
Yeah.
eastern subterranean termite, and they live underground.
Okay.
So the powder post beetles, they live inside of the wood. So they
Okay.
don't have anything to do with going underground or anything like that. They actually nest, breed, etc., inside of the wood.
Okay. Okay. And so when people are like inspecting their homes, how can they tell the difference? Because I mean, this is just I mean, I've learned this from you guys just from home inspections, but I mean, the destruction kind of somewhat looks the same. I mean,
Well,
similar.
yes, yes. So termites build shelter tubes, and you may not see the shelter tube because it may be inside the cinder block and so forth.
Yeah.
But when you look at a floor joist or any type of subflooring or any type of piece of wood,
Yeah.
you're going to notice these little tiny little holes, and they're about like the size of a dart. So if you were throwing like a dart at a piece of wood, that's
Yeah.
about the size of the hole. And sometimes they will have frass that is emitting from, which is like a powdery substance,
Okay.
and it'll be emitting from the hole, and it'll just be kind of just like raining down, but a powder from the hole.
Okay.
As far as the damage is concerned, the damage does look similar
Yeah.
when you were to if you were to poke into it. A lot of times well, of course, you don't see the mud inside of there,
hmm
and you're gonna if you poke into it and you start breaking open the wood, you're also going to see like that same fine powder coming out of the wood, which would
Okay.
be a telltale sign that it is powder post. And again, you're not going to see the deep galleries like a subterranean termite with the mud inside of the wood.
Okay. Okay. So the difference is, I guess, the powder versus the mud. So, okay, that makes sense.
Correct. And bigger galleries, bigger
Okay.
channels. Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, but the destruction, would you say that the destruction is similar to termites or how does it differ?
Well, I would say that subterranean termites will do more damage.
Okay.
Um, they can do, quite a bit more damage in a bigger spread out area.
Okay.
Powder post beetle, they will get in one joist, and when they're done there, they'll hop over to the next joist. But I mean, it can be widespread if it's not, corrected over a long period of time. If somebody doesn't go into their crawl often and get an inspection. But
Yeah.
I would say that, subterranean termites can be more widespread, and
Okay.
probably the evidence, and and the damage could be definitely more extensive.
Okay. Okay. And I know that you guys have mentioned when we do pest inspections that, well, there's signs of powder post, but they're not active.
Active, yeah.
Explain kind of that because that's like such a hard question to explain to buyers and sellers. They're like, well, wait a minute, we have evidence of them, but you're saying they're not active, but then there's evidence anyway, so it's so confusing.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer. And
Yeah.
that could be with it's an easier question definitely for termites.
Yeah.
With powder post beetles, there has to be, a few elements that are working in their favor. March to August, I mean
Okay.
May to August is going to be their time frame where you're going to see evidence of them.
Uh-huh.
There has to be high moisture readings and those conducive conditions in a
Mhm.
crawl space. If we're not seeing any frass emitting, or it's not the time of the year, or the moisture readings in the wood are below that 20% or 18% threshold,
Mhm.
then we are going to say that it is probably inactive.
Okay.
Um, but saying that, we always recommend that you may want to get it checked again, just to make sure that they're in there, but they're not dormant at that
Yeah.
time, that the
Yeah.
larva is in there and we're not seeing them coming out.
Yeah. So where are the hot zones that people should really focus on with these powder post beetles in their homes?
Very good question. So they can be in our homes, of course. I look at people's wood floor and I see them, but
Oh,
there's evidence of them, but that literally was milled from the tree. you
yeah.
know I mean, they were coming from the tree. With that
Yeah.
being said, um you know if you have trees around your house and there's dead limbs, I would get the dead limbs off the tree, because they could have powder post beetles, and powder post beetles will find cracks in your foundation and crevices around your vents maybe, and try to enter in your crawl space. They're
Okay.
attracted to light. So, there's a big porch light on. They could go towards the light and then work their way in to the crawl space, to the basement,
Oh,
etc. Wood piles around a house, I would keep them off of the ground, covered up with a tarp. If you start seeing that frass emitting from them,
yeah.
I would dispose of the wood or burn it up or something,
Okay.
because they could leave there and then go to the house. And then, of
Okay.
course, I would always, recommend a yearly inspection to
Yeah.
check your house.
Yeah. So you said that they're attracted to light?
They are attracted to light. Yes, a
Okay.
lot of
That's so interesting.
yeah, a lot of swarming insects or flying insects are attracted to light.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about that. And it's surprising because the termite myth, is like the wood piles near your house, but it still does make sense not to keep wood piles near your house for the powder post beetles.
And they
So,
fly and they fly,
yeah.
so it's not like you can just spray around your house
Yeah.
and think about, oh, the guy does pest control, so we'll just spray around the house. No, they fly and they yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. So how can somebody tell of an active infestation versus old like damage from a past infestation?
well, I guess it would be between the months of March and August,
Yeah.
and it would be high moisture readings. And when I
Okay.
say high moisture readings, it's not in the air; it's in the wood.
It's in the
So
okay.
yes, so if it's 18 to above 20%,
Hmm.
and you see the lines of frass coming out, it would be deemed that it would be active.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
That definitely makes sense. And it's interesting though, because now I look for the evidence of them because, I'm so just used to like looking for termites, but now, if I'm in a crawl space or a basement or so on, it's pretty interesting because now I'm looking for powder post, but now after talking with you, just in the short time that we've talked already, I'm like, oh, okay. So I can tell the difference, just because of that sawdust kind of situation. Is that
Yes,
what you
it'll be
it
like
kind of that's what it looks like?
yeah, it'll be like a powder,
Powder, yeah.
like baby
Yeah.
powder, or something like that. And
Yeah.
you go into some of these older homes, and it's the wood has actually it was from the tree.
Okay.
So I mean, they'll be there forever. I mean,
Oh, wow.
the wood was milled with whole house borers or, powder post beetle holes in it. And it could, if the house is 50, 80, 100 years old, those holes are that long,
Oh,
that old.
yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. I never would have thought that, the damage, you could see it just from milling it. Yeah, that's so interesting. Y- um, w- what is the typical damage that you would see with powder post beetles?
So a lot of times we'll go into a house and somebody's already kind of dug in at the wood, and it just
Yeah.
kind of, it more like crumbles. It's
Okay.
more like a crumbling effect than more like a cracking effect,
Okay.
than like if you were probing in at the wood for termites.
Yeah.
It's soft and it's hollow in
Okay.
spots, but it's almost like crumbling up like a dirt clod when you just, like, if you were to bust open, it's just kind of flakes of wood and then all of that powder kind of combined.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
Okay. So that's the difference with termites. It literally looks like I mean, it's crumbles, but it's like it almost looks like it's eaten, like,
it
well,
does.
which literally it is. So, you know what I mean? So, okay. So that kind of makes sense, the differences, because I was just thinking about a house I just had, um, a baseboard I was looking at that was terribly infested with termites. So,
Okay.
just kind of, yeah, thinking about what that looked like versus this. And at what point would you say that this becomes a serious concern, with powder post? Because I know that sometimes when I've had buyers that have had evidence, you guys, and I always hear, well, just have them check on it. But how do you know when it's serious?
If it's, I mean, if you have a crawl space and it's more than a third or half of the crawl space,
Okay.
I would say that it would be concerning.
Okay.
I mean, you need to have it treated definitely.
Okay. Okay. And how long, like, so with termites, I know that they travel, I believe, like, what is it, like a foot a year, or am I wrong? How long, how do these beetles travel? Like, is there any like time, like, how much they eat or whatever, or is there any time amount, like how quickly they eat it, or how versus how they don't? Like with termites, I know that there's like a distinct, that they end up infesting it, and so, they take so long to eat, literally.
Yeah, that's termite. I mean, powder post beetles. They can have their eggs inside of the wood for up to 5 years,
Oh, wow.
and just kind of waiting for that right element of it being moist
Yeah.
and so forth. Um, but as far as them eating, I mean, per year,
Yeah.
that's really hard to say.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if like how similar they were, because they seem so similar to termites, but then so, I mean, but they're different.
Yes, they
So,
are very different. A
yeah.
termite is more aggressively eating than a powder post.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Like, which one? So you're okay. So you answered my question. Like, that powder post do move. They sometimes damage the wood a little slower.
I would say so, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Definitely. Definitely. And what was I going to say? Oh, I lost track, my train of thought, because I was talking, I was thinking, um, with the powder post beetles, really the moisture is the issue, which is with everything else, water, moisture is the issue. And you're saying that the moisture in the wood, how can a homeowner like decide whether or not their wood is too moist, or what should they look for?
Well, first of all, an inspection, from
Yeah.
a qualified person to see. We would do moisture readings in
Okay.
all four corners of the crawl. We'd
Okay.
be looking for, standing water. That would be a big problem.
Okay.
No vapor barrier,
Okay.
inadequate ventilation, of
Okay.
course, high moisture readings. So, all those things are elements, for having a moisture issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
So,
there's ways to correct it, of course, but yeah, those would be the ways
yeah.
that
Yeah.
we'd be
Definitely.
looking for.
it just seems like moisture causes so many problems with all of these insects. I mean, it seems to attract all of them. So that's
Yeah,
crazy.
termites and fungal growth and all kinds
Yeah,
of things. Yeah, and a
it's,
lot of people don't go to their crawl space that often, and because it's not a very fun place to go, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, it should be inspected frequently.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I have a house right now and we're about to close on it. And luckily the buyers are going to put in the vapor barrier and then the sump pump, but that was one of the items that was like a maybe after the fact. But now that, after doing this, chatting with you, I mean, it's just they have to do it because regardless of termites or powder post, I mean, you got to do it. And it's a 100-year-old house. So
Yeah,
um
the vapor barrier is when we go into crawls and we see evidence of powder post beetles, and as soon as we see no vapor barrier, we're just like, I mean, no wonder.
yeah.
No wonder. And sometimes people just say, well, I just want to get the powder post beetle, treated. And we're like, but you really have to get the vapor barrier down so this will not continue to happen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So with the treatment, I understand how termites are treated, but how are powder post beetles treated? How does that work?
Well, we will use a borate and we
Okay.
will topically apply the wood. We put a dye in there so it actually shows evidence of previous treatment, because if you did not have the dye in there, no one would know that it was treated. So we
Okay.
put a dye in there and it makes, the little bit of a tint of a bluish color,
Yeah.
bluish green color. And so it's basically a topical application.
Okay. Okay. Is this something that you get yearly or how does that work?
So basically, what happens is that we will do the job and we will treat the area that's that's problematic,
Yeah.
and then we want to come back in 1 year to see if there's frass still coming out, and if
Okay.
there is, then there would be a reapplication.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So, okay. That makes sense. So it's a little different than termites because, typically with termites, you treat it, you put the bait systems in and you just kind of check it.
You're good to
This
go. Yep, yep.
Yeah, this one's a little different. I was thinking about it because I was like thinking, well, great, if you treat it in one place, could you treat it in one place and then get them in another place? Or how does that work?
Yes, yes, you could if
Oh,
there was still. I mean, you could still get powder if you treated an area and there was another area that wasn't showing them at the
yeah.
time of inspection, but the moisture condition was not resolved. Sure, when we came back, we could look at our area that we treated and look at the other area and say, well, now they're over there because the water wasn't taken care of, the vapor barrier wasn't taken care of, installing a dehu as we, suggested wasn't taken care of, keeping their vents open, etc.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And w when you guys do pest inspections for like a seller prior to going on the market, um this is something you guys will look for. And then is there something different compared to like termites, when you have termites and then you have them treated for sellers, is there some other different way that you let sellers know that they can give to like the realtor or that we can post that they have been treated, or is it just this kind of very similar to termites?
Well, we do something that's called a pre-listing inspection, and we will
Okay.
basically the same as a wood destroying insect report, a WDIR, but
Yeah.
we're not doing an official WDIR, and we would let the seller know, our findings of whatever was there.
Yeah.
If we felt that there was active powder post beetles, of course
Okay.
we would, let them know and
Mhm.
give them a quote on that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, is there any big common myths or misunderstandings about powder post beetles that you feel like people, the general population
Well,
thinks about them?
it's something that's, you have to be very careful when you say that it's active.
Yeah.
That's my understanding, that I've, been trained and told. Um, a lot of people will just, if they see the holes, they'll just say it's active.
Okay.
Well, we kind of mentioned, before, the the frass emitting,
Yeah.
high moisture readings. You have to make sure that the right time of year. All these things you have to make sure that it's in all that element before you can just say, because you can go in a lot of homes and you just see these little pinholes, little dart holes, and
Yeah.
you can't just say that it's active.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing all the other things, that I had mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's what I'm thinking because I've had a couple of houses and you guys have been like, well, there's signs, but they're not active. So I was just kind of curious about that. Any other common myths about powder post beetles that people, talk about or
Not that I can think of, no.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's cool. Are the powder post beetles more common in older homes or are they just as common in new homes?
Well, I would say probably older homes, but if there is a problem, with dead tree limbs and
Yeah.
firewood, around a house, I
Yeah.
would say, they could be. But I would say from my experience, I mostly see them in older homes.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely. I could see that would be a little bit more.
And mostly, I'm sure people have seen them in basements, unfinished basements, but
Yeah.
where I've usually seen them is in crawl spaces, maybe outdoor storage closets,
Okay.
exterior, detached barns,
Okay.
um, sheds,
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Okay. So with a house on a slab, I mean, you could still get them then if you had like you said, like a storage closet or something of
Sure.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. We,
Yeah.
we actually saw one. It had didn't have a garage, and it was about a 10 by 10 foot storage closet that's attached to the house. It was, I would say, it was an older home.
Yeah.
Um, they had definitely had some moisture conditions in there from grading that was
Oh,
going
well.
inside. Water was going inside, and the wood was, water rotted. But we did see evidence of, powder post beetles in the wall framing.
Oh,
There
wow.
was no drywall, so we could actually physically see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's crazy. So what what is the best way for a homeowner to prevent powder post beetle, having a problem with powder post beetles?
Well, like I said, I think I would, definitely make sure that the dead tree limbs are away from the house.
Hmm.
Um, making sure there's no wood piles that are up against the house. And that's for anything. That's for
Yeah.
termites. That's for, carpenter bees, carpenter ants. If you're going to do that, keep the wood pile up off the ground.
Yeah.
Have it just sitting on the ground. You know, put a tarp over the top of it. Making sure that your foundation vents do not have any holes in them. If you see any foundation cracks, get those repaired. I mean, cracks, crevices, you can only do so much because they can find their way in.
Yeah.
But that would, I mean, on an exterior, that's what I would suggest. Now, interior, we kind of discussed that, just to have a yearly inspection, or if a homeowner pops their head in there and they start seeing sagging, shredding insulation and maybe some standing water or no vapor barrier,
Yeah.
then I would say, that would be cause for,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
alarm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
For to be concerned, excuse me.
yeah, yeah, not a problem. Well, it's interesting too because I tell buyers and sellers, hey, you need that vapor barrier, or I know that's going to pop up. It's going to pop up through the transaction, but it just seems like it's just more important to have a vapor barrier and have all the things in the crawl space or the basement because it's not just termites. I mean, there's
It
just
is not.
some
I mean, if
there's
you
so
don't
many
have
things.
if you don't have a vapor barrier, I mean, you're going to get the bearding slash shredding insulation, because water
Yeah.
is naturally rising up out of the earth, condensating on the wood, causing fungal growth, wood decay fungi potentially. Um, that insulation is not made to hold water. So
Yeah.
it does like that cotton candying effect. So
Yeah.
not only could you start losing your insulation, you could start getting, like I mentioned, fungal growth. It is
Yeah.
moisture readings, for North Carolina, anything 20% or above is a conducive condition for termites,
Okay.
and and a lot of other things
Yeah.
too.
Well, that's what, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in a crawl space, I mean, if you've got that musty, damp, nasty smell in there, if you just open it up and you smell that, that could potentially, be going upstairs too. and no
Yeah.
one wants that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was just thinking, it just ruins your air quality too, because I mean, I would assume, if it was that bad of conditions in your crawl space, I mean, you're gonna be ingesting in that if you with a crawl space as well. So, I mean, it's just definitely something to think about and work on as a homeowner for sure. And for us, selling houses, I mean, I see it all the time. I can always tell, especially with standing water. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
there's an
One
issue.
thing is I go to homes and and I'll be doing a WDIR
Yeah.
for obviously, one of our customers. And
Yeah.
their crawl space is fine. They have a good vapor barrier, and it'll be the summertime and I say, hey, your foundation vents, I mean, they say, oh, I forgot to open them up, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that say just keep them closed all the time. There's some people that say keep them open. Well, if you're going to have them closed, it better be the right elements, or there better be a dehumidifier in there. But
Yeah.
in general, I mean, there's a reason why homes with crawl spaces are built with foundation vents.
Yeah.
It's to move the air around, so it doesn't get hot and steamy under there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So now this might be a weird question because I'm just curious. It just popped in my head. When people encapsulate their crawl spaces or basements, could they still get powder post beetles or termites? I mean, I would assume, yeah.
Termites, yes,
Okay.
definitely. Um,
Yeah.
I I once you encapsulate a crawl, you are keeping the temperature in the wood very low, not to
Yeah.
where powder post will thrive.
Okay.
So it would probably be very unlikely
Okay.
powder post.
Yeah.
Uh, could they? Yeah, they could. I mean, if the dehumidifier goes down or something
Yeah.
like that, something strange.
Yeah.
But as far as termites are concerned, absolutely.
Okay. I was always curious
Definitely
about
not.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that because I know it's funny because people encapsulate them and they're like, no, I'm solving all the problems. But I know that a lot of the encapsulation I've seen have actually created like a high radon level. So I was just wondering what would happen on the pest side of it. I mean, could you still have all the same problems, which it sounds
Yeah.
like you
I
might.
think one of the really important things is when you encapsulate, you need around the piers,
Mhm.
and that's the main, like the supports, and
Yeah.
well around the foundation, you need to leave that 4 to 6 inch inspection gap
Okay.
for the top of the foundation.
Yeah.
Because if they take that vapor barrier and they go all the way up to the top of the foundation or even cover the seal plate, we're not going to be able to do an inspection because the mud tubes from the termites could be going all the way up the foundation. But kind of got off a little bit, but that's something that's very important about, as far as encapsulation. You need
Yeah.
to have that inspection gap.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I there was one house I sold that like it was literally like covered. I mean, where you couldn't see anything. So that definitely makes sense. I did not know that. What is the worst damage you've seen from a powder post beetle?
Probably the worst was a house up in Yadkinville that was pretty much like a swamp under there.
Oh,
And it was, I would say, probably half to 2/3 of the subfloor had to be rebuilt.
oh, oh, that's
From
rough.
what I heard from
Yeah,
from the homeowner, a couple of years later. I mean, the
yeah.
wood, you could just grab it and just, a
Oh,
2x8 and just literally just break it with your hand.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It wasn't safe to walk in the house.
Oh, wow.
You
Yeah.
may fall through. You may
Oh,
fall through.
wow.
It
Yeah. So
was pretty bad.
I have a house like that right now where the floors fell through. So it's just making me think about that. I mean, we're selling it for just the land, basically. But yeah, I could only
Yeah,
imagine.
that doesn't happen often. You don't. It's not like the cartoons where you sit down in a chair and and you fall through the chair or something like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah,
yeah, that was like once in a lifetime, something that you would see.
yeah. Well, this is a once in a lifetime house too. I had a lot of realtors getting mad at me because I refused to put a lockbox on. But I'm like, no way, man. Like I opened the door and like the floors are all falling through. And I'm like, yeah, this is for land. We're not going in the house.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you want to buy it? you can go in then. But
Yeah,
if
there
it's,
you go.
it was really unsafe, but that makes sense about the moisture. That also, man, that would be gross. Like that, it would attract snakes, all that moisture. So that just doesn't work for me. Not a snake fan. Do you run into a lot of snakes when you're doing inspections or?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was probably about 3 years ago. It was just random. I don't know why. I was seeing black snakes, in crawls.
Oh, really?
Knock on wood, I have not seen
Oh,
a snake in a while, but we always see snake skins. We always see snake skins.
oh
I
yeah.
mean, some of them are very old, but when you look at the foundation vent and you see that, nickel to a quarter size hole,
Yeah.
round hole in the vent, a mouse has chewed his way in.
Yeah.
And so, snakes don't want to be in a crawl, but they're going to sense, and smell the mice, and they're going to go in there for one reason, and that's for food.
Yeah, yeah, also, yeah, true, true. Or get away from weather. I mean, water or something. They
Yeah,
go, yeah,
yeah,
that,
yeah, but they like to go in there after those mice.
yeah, oh, yeah, not a huge fan of snakes at all. But so I guess the only last question, I think we've kind of already gone over this, but just to make it real clear, what how should or what should a homeowner just look for as they inspect their crawl space or basement again, just so that they know. So in case they run into something, they can reach out to you guys to do a home inspection or
Sure.
not, I mean, a pest inspection.
Yeah. So from my experience, most homeowners are not going to go into the crawl.
Yeah.
But if they do, if they do, great. I
Yeah.
definitely encourage that. Be safe. Um, you know, look for those tiny little pinholes.
Okay.
Look for those tiny little pinholes as far as in a basement or a crawl.
Yeah.
Look for those. They're like little dart holes.
Yeah.
Look for the lines of powder that are coming down. And maybe if it's a crawl space, you may even look on the ground and you'll see like a little mound, actually, like a little ant mound,
Yeah,
that,
that's what I was gonna say. They look like, don't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like if you were to get sand and you were just to kind of, make like a little mound,
Yeah.
it would be like that, a powder. If you start seeing that, I would, be concerned and, you know, give us a call, give somebody a call.
Yeah.
And then on the outside, you may have wood siding, shingles, something like that. Any kind of exterior wood, just periodically walk around it and start seeing if you see those little tiny pinholes. Again, they're hard to see, but start, look to see if you see that. And again, the frass emitting down, that would be the real telltale sign. And it could be, again, wood piles, it could be pallets, it
Yeah.
could be just, stored lumber that you're going to use, down the road or something like that.
Yeah.
I saw this guy, he had this tree. I guess I don't know where he got it at, but he was going to make tables or mantles out of it.
Oh,
It had been sitting under his deck for quite some time. And,
yeah.
I said, hey, this wood, I'm not sure how sturdy this wood is anymore. Because, it's been destroyed by carpenter ants and, uh, and powderpost beetles.
Oh, wow.
So, those are the things that I would look for, and just of course to make sure that your crawl space does not have moisture conditions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Which you don't want it anyways for all the other things
For
that
many other reasons, yeah.
all the other things that tear up your crawl space and and basement with all the other moisture issues. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and chatting about powder post beetles, and I know everybody else does as well because it's just like a big question. People are like, "What are they?" And what do I need to look for? Because nobody wants their home, the biggest investment that they make, destroyed. So, I truly appreciate you coming on and chatting, and we hope you will come on again and chat with
Of course,
us.
and thank you very much for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah, not a problem. And we will have all of your information below in the comments. So in case anybody needs to reach out to Eric, you can also just reach out to me. I have all of his information as well and can get you contacted with Eric. But thank you again, Eric, so much for coming on. And we appreciate it and hope you
It's a
come on
pleasure.
again.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.